Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here. My name is Corey Richardson, and I help run Soundslice.com. I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for checking out this webinar. What Soundslice is a music tech company based in Chicago, and we build music education software that combines all the goodness of the web and music notation. So all the things that are good about the internet that you expect to have these days, we make it our mission to incorporate that into the music learning experience to be the best possible way anyone could have to learn a piece of music. If you're a teacher, this will probably interest you if you have a few small private lesson students or some smaller ensembles, and you're interested in figuring out a way to incorporate some helpful technology into the classroom or into the studio that improves the practicing experience, specifically between the in-person lesson and what they do when they get home, the sort of what do I do when I get home problem that we all have. So like I said, this is all around the idea of using just web technology. Soundslice is built for the web. There are some really great advantages that come from being just built for the web. For one, you are just accessing this software in your web browser. You're not downloading anything. That's what it means when someone says web software. There's nothing to download. You just go into your browser and you go to soundslice.com in this case. So some of the advantages in web software in a music technology standpoint is that you don't need any specific hardware to run the software, right? So it doesn't matter if you have Windows or Mac, if you've got mobile, if you've got tablets, if they're all iPad, if they're kind of a mix and match. This is really nice because having unified hardware is obviously very expensive to do. You don't need to outfit a MIDI lab with all of the same devices if you're going to use web software, right? It's pretty crucial. You don't need to install anything, which is also very, very important. You just navigate to soundslice.com. The updates happen behind the scenes. This is crucial. To imagine being in a MIDI lab where you have a lesson plan and students come in and you're getting set to go. Everyone starts and you get the notification that, hey, all the software needs to be updated right now, and there go your first 10 minutes. Maybe you don't have to imagine that. Maybe that's actually happened to you. So with web software, with Soundslice, all the updates happen behind the scenes. That you're accessing the most current version, no matter how you're accessing it. Think of Facebook. When you go on Facebook on your computer or you go on your phone, you're not updating anything. You're just accessing the most current version of Facebook, which is web software. So Soundslice works much the same. We are cloud-based, which is great. Unfortunately, seen a few teachers who have to deal with some pretty rough ways to share material with their students. I've seen some inboxes of teachers that are just full of MP3s or PDFs that they're emailing manually to students, whether that be playing tests or just recordings from a practice session. And it's not the teacher's fault by any means. It's just sort of, those are the old tools that we've been dealing with up until this point, but Soundslice is built for the web and Soundslice is cloud-based. Really important aspect of having web software is that the students are more and more likely to have access at home. And if you're building, if you're starting to build a music tech classroom, and if you're wanting to incorporate this technology, it'd be really great if all you had to worry about was just having an internet connection and the devices weren't as important. So now that we've talked a little bit about just what web software, what's the benefit of web software, that's great. But what should music software look like that's designed specifically for, not just web software? What should music education software look like? Well, it should probably be flexible with content, right? You should be able to have all your sheet music. You should be able to have audio and video resources. You'd want it to work on any device, and you'd want it to work pretty dang well. You'd want all the new tools that you're sort of used to seeing these days, whether that's your metronome. You'd want to be able to have reference recordings that you could make loops in, to maybe even transpose or have some helpful visualization tools. You'd want a one-window experience. If you've ever tried to have a tech-savvy practice session on your own, you know what it's like. You know that you have your music stand loaded up with your sheet music and your books. Maybe you've got a computer plugged into some speakers with iTunes or something. and you've got maybe a metronome somewhere, and you're just sort of bouncing back and forth between practicing and going to your computer, stopping, starting, backing up recordings, flipping pages. God help you if you have to plug in a amplifier or anything like that for your instrument. It's just kind of very cumbersome. So if you're practicing with web software, you'd want a one-window experience. Making interactive lessons, you'd want them to be easy to create. And you'd want this thing to be very affordable, because we know in music technology, expensive resources definitely don't guarantee a better learning experience. That is something we all know. So a drum roll, please. That's as crazy as this presentation is going to get. What I'm talking about here is Soundslice. So what we do again is we join the web with music notation, all the good stuff about the web notation. We work on all devices. We provide interactive music learning tools. We allow you to manage your digital curriculum with students. It's easy to create interactive lessons, and it's even easier to learn with. Best technology on the web. The very best, and I promise you by the end of this presentation, you will have seen some things that you didn't know the web could do. Finally, it is a total bargain. And show you Soundslice. This is the website. This is the home page. I'm going to go in here and navigate to my library. And I'm going to pull up a Scott Joplin piano piece called The Cascades. Ragtime piece. You load it up here and you'll see, okay, it looks like regular sheet music. It's loaded in my browser. Or is it? You'll notice this play button in the bottom left. So the music, the sheet music is synchronized with real recordings. This is real audio, it's not MIDI. And as the playhead moves, the notes that are being played light up. It's pretty powerful stuff, especially if you're practicing. And in the physical sheet music world, what happens when you get to the end of a page or you get to a repeat sign? Well, you kind of one-hand your instrument with the music in your other hand, all while trying to play musically and in time, which is easier said than done for sure. In Soundslice, the music navigates on its own. The scrolling happens automatically so that anything that needs to be in view is in view, and the repeats just work like they should. Just like that. Sometimes I think of Soundslice as kind of being like, oh, duh. Of course, that's how it should work. And indeed, that is an oh, duh moment. Yes, a repeat should just go to the start of where it needs to go. When it comes to navigating, it's very simple. In the physical sheet music world, your instructor might say, okay, let's rehearse from letter B, or let's take this from measure 92 or something like that. You kind of fumble with your pages again. In Soundslice, it's very simple. Wherever you click on the sheet music is where the playback will start from. So you don't need to worry about having, different recordings in iTunes or anything like that. Just wherever you click, that's where we're going to play from. So I'm not stopping or starting anything, just clicking and moving. Notice here at the bottom, there's a play bar that you can scoot along and scroll through the notation that way. It even tells you what measure you're in. So that's another kind of oh, duh moment, but yes, of course, that's how it should work. It's really simple. So putting notation on a screen has always been a challenge, right, with music technology. There weren't screens when people first started engraving sheet music. They weren't so concerned that perhaps one day there might be a thing called a MacBook Air that some special treatment for music engraving, but technology that's existed has sort of just been coping with PDFs as best as possible. And with a PDF, you can really only do so much. If you need to shrink it for a smaller size screen or a small device like a tablet, you just sort of crunch the data, and it's not very helpful. It's hard to read. And the flip side of that problem, if you actually zoom in on a small screen, nightmare scenario where you're just kind of cramped. You can't actually practice and navigate at the same time this way. You're just kind of inspecting very closely. It's not a meaningful way to navigate music. Soundslice does not use PDFs at all, rendering real music data in the web browser. And something that's so crucial about that is that it allows us to render the notation live. So as you'll see here, as I scroll through a piece, navigating between pages, I'm just navigating the music. Everything's being drawn live. And if I was to resize the browser window, it's going to be optimized to fit so that I can actually read the music appropriately. You'll notice that the number of bars in every system adjusted based on the width of my screen, and it'll change if I change it again. So you get an idea of what this will look like on a different size, tablet or anything like that. You can also zoom in or zoom out to your heart's content, and the notation is going to be optimized to fit. When it comes to practicing, we know that there's a huge benefit of sitting down and working with real recordings, right? That's how you develop your musicality. It's how you understand the nuances that make performing so wonderful. To do this in a past life, if you wanted to practice with real recordings and a piece of music, you would need some kind of player, whether it's a CD player, probably not a CD player anymore, but maybe more like iTunes on your computer. And you start your recording, you play, you stop, you back it up, you start it, you play, you stop, you back it up, you start, play, stop, all that stuff all over and over again. You spend more time sort of fumbling with the tool than you do actually practicing, which is not very meaningful. So in Soundslice, it's incredibly simple. You just click and drag anywhere in the music, and wherever you click and drag, a loop is going to be created that you can play along with. I'm going to show you a piece here by Mark Lettieri, who you may or may not know from Snarky Puppy. He's the lead guitar player there. He's a friend of Soundslice. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a simple loop by clicking and dragging. You can make that loop at any part of a bar. It doesn't need to be just the start or the stop of a phrase. The beginning or the end of a bar. We give you some tools as well to optimize how you practice with a loop. Sometimes if you're playing along with a recording and you're working on a set of measures that's maybe in the middle of a phrase, it can be a little tricky to know how to jump into that phrase if you're playing along with the recording. You need to know the exact right moment to jump in and play along. We made a tool that makes it really easy to count you in to any loop you create. So on the bottom left here, the play button, you'll see that there's an option to play with counting. Click it into your loop. We also give you another option, which is that you could highlight a phrase for a loop, but only play it once, so not a loop. By default, any highlighted phrase will loop, but we wanted to give you the option to make a selection that was only played once if you should like. In addition to creating loops, it would be really, really beneficial and meaningful if you could slow down the content of that recording very simply. In the past, this is done by buying some expensive, clunky software that doesn't work so great and is hard to use. Soundslice, it's incredibly easy. You playback speed bar in the bottom left hand. All you have to do is drag that to wherever you'd like it to be. So you notice the pitch stays intact. You don't need to hack together any kind of solution on your own. You can just play along at the given speed that you'd like, create a loop, slow things down, really practice effectively and efficiently. What Soundslice looks like in a tablet really quick, just so you get the idea. Again, this is not device specific, and I haven't downloaded anything in this tablet here. It's not an app, it's just in the web browser I've navigated, you can see to soundslice.com. Creating loops on the tablet is just as easy as you'd expect. You're tapping, and you can adjust that size of the loop by moving your finger. It's pretty intuitive, pretty smooth in terms of navigating even further. You have all the tools that you'd expect in touchscreen devices. The pinch zoom allows you to re-optimize the size of that music, and it's going to be fitted to the display of your screen. Again, this is just PDF in every way. Optimized experience, and playback is going to work just the same way as on a desktop. So you get a sense of what Soundslice is going to look like on different devices. Again, this is web technology. It doesn't matter what your students have to access it. It's going to look the same. Dive a little bit deeper into some more advanced learning tools that you have access to in Soundslice. Let's say you've got a student who's maybe working on a lead sheet. This is just kind of a pop song that's got a vocal line and a piano accompaniment, a very basic piano accompaniment. A wrench into this situation and say that the student is a clarinet player. So you've got this vocal lead sheet, and they're on clarinet, and they want to be able to practice with the recording of the song, but we know they would have to transpose to do that, which is a little bit cumbersome to say the least. And if they're a beginner, that might be territory that you don't want to get into right away. And you just sort of have created this barrier of what can the student do. In Soundslice, we give you the ability to change any part of the score, the transposition. And you can hide the things that are maybe a little distracting. So let me play this real quick. You get the idea of what it is. Tell you what everyone knows. So like I said, just kind of a pop song. I'm going to go over to the left side and open up the voice option here. You'll see there's an instrument panel for everything in the score. And I can change the key, put us in B flat. Player has the vocal line in B flat. I can also go over to that piano. Let's say it's too much for me to look at. I'm just learning. I can go even one step further. Maybe I'm going to hide these guitar diagrams. That's not meaningful. And the lyrics maybe are just kind of getting away. So now I can play just with the melody for me. I try to tell you what everyone knows. You're perfect. So it's a little less distracting for somebody who's learning, who's a little bit newer to an instrument or to a given topic. It's a really nice way to not have to make a new score in any situation. Print out new Sibelius files that are for different instruments. This is all done on the fly. A student can save this view so that every time they go to the score, it's the way it looks for them. But you could also just as well refresh this, and you'll go back to the original score just as you wanted. You can undo any change you've made. And in terms of navigating, this is the way to go. Let's say another example here. If you're a singer, and maybe you're in a choir, you're used to getting music that's in SATB. How do you typically learn, right? You probably go to a class, and the teacher is in front of a piano, and they're going to go through every section, playing the piece by rote. Memorize it. You're going to talk about some musical ideas along the way. But if you are not someone who's as fluent in being able to discern your part from an SATB score, when you go home, you're going to have some problems recreating what you worked on in rehearsal. And it's just not a very effective way to come back to class. The teacher has to not start from square one, but you do have to sort of dig up a little bit of what you did yesterday just to get everyone on the same page again. In Soundslice, we generate synthetic audio for every item in the score. That means that a student could actually play the MIDI version of just their part in the score. Let me show you what that looks like here. On the audio source icon, I'm going to switch from audio to synthetic. You'll hear MIDI. So now I'm going to go to piano and just turn off the MIDI. So now as a student, I can go home and I can practice this. I can remember my part a little bit better, or a teacher could even say, all right, basses, I want you to go home tonight and I want you to listen to your part and to the soprano part. And I want to hear want you to understand more about how your parts interact, how they are similar. Very, very meaningful thing for a student to be able to go home and do on their own. On a similar note, let's say you're beginning to learn how to read music, or you're maybe picking up the piano and you're fresh to that. Sometimes you might just want a little bit better idea of, where am I putting my fingers on the keyboard. Visualizer that lights up as you play. I had to only view one staff at a time in this visualizer. Just the treble clef. And here's just the bass clef. And here they are back together. So again, it's a really great practice tool. We have the same technology for fretted instruments and for fingerboards. So, ukulele, guitar, bass, as well as violin, cello, anything like that. It's something we could definitely expand to wind instruments and create interactive fingering charts. That would really depend on the feedback we get. And I only say that to let you know that we are constantly building new features on the site every single day. And what we build really depends on what we hear. So if there's a demand for wind instruments with fingering charts, we will build it. The nice thing about this web technology stuff is that as soon as we built that keyboard visualizer, and it was available to everybody at the same time. You wake up to a nice email from Soundslice that says, hey guys, this is new, try it out, play with it today. This fretboard, excuse me, just give you a little glimpse of what that looks like. So the frets light up as you play along, pretty great. Again, it's just kind of simple to use. It's great for beginners to have that kind of visualization. So I've shown you how you can toggle between a real recording and synthetic audio, but you can also add as many different recordings to a given piece as you'd like. In this example, there's a lead track and a rhythm track for a really basic guitar song that you might be working on in a guitar class. This is going to allow the student to switch back and forth between a rhythm recording and a lead recording and still follow along with the music. So let me show you that. Mix. So now I'm going to switch to the rhythm track and I'll just practice lead. Or I can switch to lead and just practice rhythm. You'll notice that as I was switching those sources, the music didn't stop. I didn't have to switch my recording in some different file browser or in iTunes or anything like that. I just was able to keep the music going and switch which source I was using. So much more powerful when you add video, and Soundslice incorporates video right into it. It's best with video, in fact. Here's a little look at a Bach piece. As you adjust the size, the notation is wrapping and optimizing. We know that it's very important to not just hear one reference recording when you're learning a given piece of music. So in Soundslice, you can add as many different versions of a recording as you'd like. And for a teacher, that's a wonderful way to get your students to compare and contrast and make some decisions. So here's the same piece by two different instrumentalists. I can create a loop anywhere in the piece and switch back and forth between these recordings. So again, this is a very meaningful way to get teachers to start encouraging students to make some creative decisions. What are different about these performances? How can I incorporate these kind of stylistic choices into my own playing? Really meaningful questions here. This website's great and the tools are all well and good, but what happens if you don't have a steady internet access in the practice room or at home? Well, wanted to show you something that's pretty new. This is Google Service Worker technology, which is just a bunch of gibberish that means, and in Google Chrome browsers in the future, but you can actually save these scores for offline usage. All you have to do in Soundslice is click Save Offline beneath the playhead. There's going to be a quick download of the content. Turn off my Wi-Fi, refresh the page, and still have access to the lesson. So the video, the loop, the keyboard visualizer, everything works the same way. And this is pretty amazing technology. You can have a student, with access to internet in your classroom or at your school, save these lessons on their own devices and make sure they have them at home or in the practice room. If you navigate to any other part of the website while you're offline, Soundslice will just let you know, hey, you're offline, but here's everything you've saved, and you can practice wherever you're at. So here's this Bach video again, offline, working no problem. So as a reminder again, this is Google Chrome technology that hopefully will spread to more browsers, and they will adapt the technology. I don't see why they wouldn't. So now let's talk a little bit about how do you actually make these interactive scores. As a teacher, if you're putting together this kind of content for your student, we accept music XML files. Your favorite notation editor of choice, whether that's Finale, MuseScore, or Sibelius, excuse me. You can use those notation editors to create your content and export a music XML file right into Soundslice. You can also use Guitar Pro or PowerTab. We accept those formats and they work very well. And recordings can be MP3s or MP4s, your own videos that you upload directly into the score, or you can link to external video sources, YouTube or Vimeo or Brightcove, for example. Let me show you just what it looks like to create a score from scratch from, say, the Sibelius side of things. So I put together a course not too long ago about how to read music for guitar players, because I am a guitar player and guitar players are not great at reading music, and it's a bit of a struggle. So I wanted to put something together to help work on that. This is a really simple etude I made that's just about rhythms and chords. And I'm going to go ahead in Sibelius and export this file as a music XML. I'll call this rhythm etude to my desktop because that's where everything goes. Head back into Chrome, into Soundslice. I will click Create a Score. Call this rhythm etude. And I'm going to have some options here as to who can see this. Is it just for me? Is it a public URL? Or is it just something I want my students to see? I'm going to click that. And I'm going to enable printing. You have the option to enable or disable printing. At this score that says I can add a recording or upload the notation. I'm going to click Upload Notation and select that music XML file from my desktop. So now I will load up this score and you'll see the music XML has rendered in Soundslice. Now that's just MIDI because I haven't used a real recording. Right off the bat, we do generate that MIDI audio automatically. Thankfully, I do have a video of me playing through this etude, so I'm going to go ahead and upload that. I'm going to upload a video file straight from my desktop and add it to the score here. Okay, so now I have this score that has my notation and a video. Now they're not synchronized yet, so I need to put them together. And in Soundslice, we do that with what's called a sync point. So right next to it, you'll see create sync point. Click on that. You'll see now the video with the notation side by side. Form of the video that I can play and watch and follow along. You'll notice that there's nothing in sync yet. To do that, it's very easy. Just tap downbeats on your keyboard. Tap, 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 tap. So now my recording is synchronized at those locations. I can move those downbeats if maybe I missed by a little bit, and you can see the waveform pretty clearly. Now the notation and the video are in sync. There's a bit of a trick here. If you're playing along to a recording, or you have a recording that uses a metronome like this one does, all you need to do is make the first and last sync point. So I'm going to make a final sync point at the very end, the last beat. Type end, E-N-D. Automatically going to do the math to synchronize the rest of the sync points. So even if we're going to be perfectly in sync now. So that's what it's like to create sync points and join the notation with the recording. If I click back to my library and open up the score, this is what the student sees. They see a perfectly synchronized recording that they can play along to, create loops, and slow down. What you want them to see. I showed you earlier a piece that had the rhythm track and the lead track for the same piece. It sounds like we didn't want you to have to duplicate the same work if you wanted to add multiple recordings to the same piece. So sync points for the same piece in one audio file and for another, you can actually just copy them. So you may have heard me playing along to a backing track in that recording I just made. I'm going to go ahead and upload the MP3 of that backing track. MP3 file that I'm going to add. The sync points from my video so that a student could switch back and forth between playing along with the video or playing along with just the backing track. So it'll take a quick second here and upload this MP3. Now you'll see my rhythm etude has a video and a backing track. So I can click a button that says copy sync points, and it's going to copy the sync points to the exact same location of the new recording. So now when I open this up, in the source icon, that I've got an audio backing track and a video, back and forth between them. You get that for free. Just copy those sync points. I also wanted to point out now that there is a synth metronome in Soundslice that you can simply enable or disable at any time. So now back to sync points. Not exactly all music is perfectly in time, whether that's intentional or not. And I wanted to show you how you can work with interpretive music that's a little more fluid, make sure that everything's still in sync. With what we call inner bar sync points. So not just downbeats, but you can actually move every single note so that it matches the recording. And in this Bach cello piece, you might notice that there's a little more fluidity with the rhythm here. So So that second beat happens with a little more anticipation. So all you have to do is grab beat 2 and measure 3 here. Scoot it so that you can see where in the waveform that's going to match to. And now when you play, we have a synchronized recording. And I wanted to let you know that this was possible. You can do this as much or as little as you'd like to, but it's very simple. Once you put together some interactive scores like this, you can group them into courses that you can share with your students or break apart into different ensembles. So in your library, go to your courses and create a course. I'm going to call this Guitar 101. You have the option to add some descriptive options. I'm just going to say that this is probably really beneficial to create these courses that have content you want to reuse again. So if you have a new student, you will always want them to have access to the same material, or you're using the same material in a new semester. Here I've created the course, and I'm just simply adding lessons from my library that I've already created. I'm just going to throw them into this course, and I can add some notes here about anything in the library. And I'm going to mark this as active so that any student in my course now just has access to it. There's a new lesson here and they are ready to go. To manage your students that have access to your courses, on the left side here, you see a button that says Invite Students. Now with every course, Soundslice generates a unique course code. Join your course rather than manually inviting them. All they have to do is go to soundslice.com/course code and type in that unique course code from you at this window. This is a nice way to sort of respect some privacy. You know, you don't need to manually have a teacher email a student or vice versa. Course code on a whiteboard or in, printed in a syllabus, can just navigate to it. It's a lot easier than having to manually invite every single student. In a course, you can see all the students on the left-hand side that have gotten access to it, and you can make sure they're in there. Really basic analytic tools in Soundslice, which is really handy for you as a teacher to see what scores are your students using, how long are they spending in the score, are they playing recordings, are they making loops, how long are they spending actually playing recordings, and you can get a bit better of an idea of have they actually practiced. Pretty simple right now. But we put them together. We have a partnership with a school in Chicago, the People's Music School. There's a fantastic organization that in part provides some free lessons to students who are interested in learning. And they were talking with us and letting us know that, sometimes students are not practicing for lessons. Surprise. Valuable for the teacher to actually sit down with a student. They want to make sure the student is putting in some work before they actually get in the door. So they wanted to have a way where they could say, all right, well, if we wanted to make a prerequisite, at least have the student have practiced 30 minutes before we got a lesson in, just to have some way of actually knowing if they were doing it. So we put together some tools like this, and it's been working great. I wanted to just make the point that this is not just for teachers in a music classroom. If you have your own music instruction blog or website, or maybe a following on YouTube or Instagram or anything like that, you are totally available to make these scores and these courses and put them in the Soundslice store. We would love to have you do that. We have teachers of different instruments, different styles, from a few different places all over the world. If you're feeling particularly industrious, please let me know. We would love to have you in here. Most of the money in the store goes directly to the teacher. We do a 70-30 split where the teacher is the 70%. So please, at the end of the presentation, if this sounds interesting to you, shoot me an email and I will help you get this set up. Course page here, this is what it looks like to have something in the store. So I wanted to leave you with just some real life examples of teachers that are using Soundslice. Here is a string quartet that's practicing a Schubert piece. The teacher found since it's a public domain score, found a MIDI file of the score and popped it into Sibelius. And from Sibelius, you can actually export music XML. And you'd be surprised, there's pretty substantial MIDI libraries for public domain music out there. I went ahead, loaded the score into Soundslice, and had the students make a recording of themselves in rehearsal. Now, the students can check out their score at home with their own recording and follow along. The teacher also synchronized the same score with a professional ensemble that they found on YouTube. So as a teacher, this is so meaningful. You can have your student go home, you can have them listen to the rehearsal from today, you can have them compare and contrast it with a professional ensemble. You can actually have them look at the score in a little more meaningful way. They can see how their part intertwines with another. Again, it's a little more meaningful than just kind of a big brick of paper. Another example where a private lesson student is working on an etude, and they've made a recording of themselves performing the etude, and so has their private lesson teacher. So now the student can go home and toggle back and forth between their own performance with their teachers and kind of make some decisions about what to do. Way you could possibly have to practice something like this. And here's another example of would be really great in just a guitar course. If you have beginning guitar students that you want to work on strumming patterns with, this is something you could reuse every semester. It's just a basic chord exercise. So really good material to have at your fingertips. If you're teaching a music theory course, to just put up some cadences and actually have your students utilize that visual keyboard and synthetic audio. If they don't play keyboard at home, they can actually hear the cadences as they happen and get a little bit better understanding about what's going on with these different ideas and concepts. So that's it. I want to thank you again for checking this out. My name is Corey at Soundslice. And just reiterating what Soundslice is the best possible way music. We want to encourage a meaningful music learning experience on the web to supplement your teaching and be as concerned about what devices you have access to. And like I said, just being really about bridging the gap between the in-person learning experience and what the student can do on their own. Pricing, Soundslice is $20 a month or $200 a year. Upload an unlimited number of scores and have an unlimited number of students for free. The students have a free account with access to all of their teachers' material. Right now, you can make a trial account of Soundslice and create up to 20 scores that cannot be shared, but you can start getting a feel for what making content in Soundslice actually looks like, and share it with your students when you're ready. Let us know, and we can flip the switch to make sure your content. Again, thank you for checking this out. If you'd like, take a look at soundslice.com/teachers. There are some scores that you can play around with there for different formats, and you can play along time and just see what the experience is actually like. And please don't hesitate, email me at corey@soundslice.com. I'd be happy to hear any questions or just any feedback that you have. Again, thank you for sharing, checking this out.